So let's start with you, Hannes. And there were three broad topics I wanted to talk about: agility, disruption, and then talent mobility. So considering the rapid changes in our business environment, being agile is more important than being big. What's your view on that as it pertains to your business?
I think you obviously already answered it in your question, because I think agility is one of the foremost important behavioral topics, emotional things we need in our business world to cope with all the uncertainty. And I think it was defined in a certain way just a couple of minutes earlier. I think it's not just a question about being responsive to changing stuff out there. I think the aspect of anticipation, I think, should be part of the definition of agility.
Okay, and could you give us a couple of examples of how you guys are embodying that in your firm?
I think one of probably the very important topics is rapid innovation. So that means the traditional way, by coming up with 100 pages of requirement statements, and you need a year to define them, and then you need another year to get it implemented. I think those times are gone. And I think it's a question about listening to the demand, producing, testing, and get into this constant cycle to improve. And this is something we have to still adapt in some parts, but this is one of the most important topics.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to take a stab at that? Paul?
Yeah, I'll probably chip in here. Building up on what has been said before, I think one of the key topics is really a question of mindset. It's very difficult to predict the future. Timing is very uncertain at best. But Thiel almost fell off the stage in terms of getting into small steps. And most companies, especially large companies, when they've been successful for a reason. And that's around execution and really doing the right thing. The only problem with the world that we live in now is if you do the right thing for too long, you end up failing. And so you need to get into that mindset where you experience, you learn, you fail, and you start again. It doesn't mean that you need to scrap your whole business, but you need to know what is core, what you will let go of, and what you will do differently in the future.
Maybe
sure.
Samit, I will absolutely build on that by saying that in today's world, being big is not systematically in opposition with being agile, and big corporations also need to arbitrage between what they want to keep as their core business and what they want to outsource. And in this conference, obviously, this is the rule of the game. And outsourcing very often for our clients is a way to become more agile. Of course, focusing on their own core business is one aspect of it, but what they expect from an outsourcer is also a capacity to scale up, innovate, invest. And I think this is important.
Okay. Thanks for that. So we'll stay with you and ask you a question around talent mobility. Of course, you work for Capgemini, and talent is really the bedrock of all the things you do. Rapid urbanization and talent mobility are big trends, and they continue to shape how we think about our businesses. What's your view on talent mobility and the role urbanization plays in the same for your firm?
Well, in Capgemini, you may know that India now represents more than half of our headcount, with north of 90,000 employees in India. When you have such a big representation, it changes the way you look at mobility, because first, there is a lot of cross-border activity, as you can imagine, on client engagements, but more generally in the firm. People tend to need to align in terms of cultural changes. But this is not only about geographical mobility. In today's world, and we are hearing about a lot of changes today in the way we are facing new challenges, disruptions, and not only technology ones, it is very important to look at talents mobility to make our people be more adapted, and ensuring that we don't over-specialize them, and taking a look at mobility, cross-functions, cross-practices is going to ensure that we'll keep the best out of our people and we keep them adapted to the changing world, including the robotics.
Mm-hmm. Until you guys have a big presence in India as well, what's your thought and view on this?
It is quite scary. I think when I joined Accenture in the London office, we were 13,000 in London and 55,000 globally, and I think hardly anyone in India. And now we're 360,000, I think, with over 100,000 in India and 10,000 in London. So, I think talent is going to be key. And I think, what I talked about around the digital IQ, the constant learning, the change of, you can't run long-term training programs. You need to, establish continuous learning in your organization and keep the people that are able to adapt and adjust and realize that you will need different skills in your organization because certain things will be automated. And, as I said, you will be much more integrated with the ecosystem. Yes, there'll be shared services, there'll be individuals that you'll be working with and partners, because a lot of things you'll need to do, you won't be able to do yourself, and you won't be able to hire people. So the people that work for you need to be able to work in a very different way than they are doing now. So I think there's a lot of change and a lot of ongoing capability building required.
Okay.
Maybe I can add something on that.
I was going to come to you.
About the talent mobility, I think in our business is also extremely important to, in this rapid changing environment, to use the mobility. And thanks to that we're a global company operating on two different continents in the three different geographics, we're trying to use this from the construction business as advantage, that we can team up people from the different countries in the different projects. And for example, our most recent project in Stockholm, like New Karolinska, the biggest hospital in Europe, was built with three different teams from three different countries. It also helps us to attract the people, the most important part of the business, what we are doing here.
Okay. And just let's stay with you. We talked earlier about robots, and we've talked about smart machines potentially taking over 1 out of 3, 1 out of 4 jobs that we currently do. The impact it will have on your business, which is a fairly labor-intensive business at a very fundamental level. So you as a company, how are you preparing to adapt to these disruptive changes that happen, especially in that area?
I was happy when I've seen the drone on the picture. That I said it's my business, because you are using the drones already on our business, and this is how we are adapting to the most dynamic growth of the business. We're also doing the 3D printing, for example, in UK. We're cooperative with Cambridge, and this is how we can use the technology and try to find out the new areas for business growth for us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And Paul, you're with Randstad, and then innovation is obviously a big focus for you. What's your view on what's happening in this area, and how do you guys really source new innovation ideas in your organization?
Sure. I mean, just to set the scene a bit. We talked about numbers, and Hannes said, we can argue about the pace of speed. We are tracking part of HR technology ventures, and what we see is in the last 5 years the number of HR technology ventures was multiplied by 8, and so was the amount of financing going after that. So for us, as a very large HR provider, it's very important to combine and include more and more a technology component to an HR angle. So selling more and more of a solution. We are talking a lot about value add here in the conference. Again, understanding what is core, what are our clients really after, and how we can co-create together is the way forward. So having an external view and bringing in innovation and technology is how we accommodate for the changes.
Okay.
If I can chip in for a second.
Go ahead.
we're in the construction business and the development business, and it seems to be very conservative. It's not so difficult to construct the business, but how to respond to the client's needs. We just, regarding innovations, we just established the new positions in the organizations, like innovation manager or the placemaker, to respond the client's needs. So it's how the business environment is changing. We need to also be adapted to that and also create the new functions which never existed before.
Interesting pacemaker. Hopefully he keeps going. So Hannes, from your perspective, you oversee a fairly large platform with fairly diverse focus areas. How do you ensure, given the expanse of the platform, that you continue to drive innovation, and in addition to some of the more brick and mortar type initiatives, how do you bring about cultural change around that?
I think I touched it briefly in my comments in the presentation as well. On the one hand side, we as a company, as Siemens, are turning into a digital or even more digital company, and that means that we have to respond in our internal processes the same way. So the transformation you're talking about has to happen to be also credible to our customers. If we are not the same what we try to sell to our customers, how convincing would we be? So this is very important, and I think the transformation in our organization, as you said, is a very cultural issue. We have to find the right people, and we have to get the right respect for diversity, because not each and everybody will be digital. We will, as the Gartner Group called it, we have to have the marathon men who have long-standing experience in an organization, and then we need the others who are very agile, very risk-taking, and to have both groups, if you just take it black and white, under one roof in the organization is by itself a challenge. And the other one is what I said, the willingness and the ability to foster innovation, to get this climate up, and this was what I was touching on, encourage each and everybody in the organization, not understanding innovation just for products or solutions, but also for processes, business models, small steps. How can I do it in a different way the next day? So that everybody gets engaged, and innovation is not seen as part of a very specific part of an organization. I think this makes the huge difference.
Okay. Till, from your perspective, just kind of taking on from what Hannes said, and we've talked about all the technological advancements that are going through, how is that changing Accenture's kind of business model, if you will, or approach towards client management?
Well, clearly for us, it's sort of digital is clearly a very big thing. Sort of something we measure when we, sort of when you listen to our earnings reports. This is something that our CEO actually reports on. We call this transitioning to the new. Sort of how much are we transitioning to the new? How much are we working with our clients around the digital, the new technology topics, versus how much of it is old? So there's a clear part of that. And then there is, of course, sort of, as Hannes was saying, we're also acquiring a lot of companies, right? We're building internal capability and everyone's getting up to speed, but we're also acquiring new companies, bringing that in to bring the new thinking and the new blood in. And then also, sort of, I guess we're also a bit always changing. So we change our operating model quite dramatically around every 5 years. So we continuously change. So ingrained in us is this continuous change. We always know there's more change coming.
And one of the things that we're seeing, really get a lot of focus and attention is the idea of user experience. So moving away from from deliverables or products, but really into the user experience space. What do you think about that, Lucia? And how do you guys see that from your client's perspective?
Definitely, taking the perspective of the user experience is as the basic of the digital transformation. And we see in most of the projects that, of course, that part is starting with the CRM part, and but also tools and platforms like one which is part of my unit, Contact Center as a Service in the cloud, multi-channel. We heard that also today, is at the forefront of that revolution. You need to understand and anticipate what your clients want. the way they behave, the way they want to purchase on a multi-channel experience. And of course, big data and analytics as part of that journey is very important to bring more value to our customer. So we see that definitely as being one of the most popular ingredients, I would say, in all the projects we're driving on transformation for digital for our clients, definitely.
Hannes?
Just in very simple terms, if the person in the office environment has the same experience as they have it in their private life, then the world would be much better. Nobody has an understanding if I can do whatever kind of purchasing with 3 clicks on an iPad or whatever, and then in the office environment I need 20 clicks and 10 signatures. Nobody will understand that, and that's basically describing in a very simplistic way the user experience we have to strive for.
And Arik, for you guys, again, you're part of your business is also B2C, where you sell to customers directly. What's your view on user experience, and how's that guiding how you go about either developing business or your approach towards new customers?
The best of our ambassadors and the marketing tools are our clients. So the word of mouth is the key in our business, and I think it's a universal approach for all businesses we are doing, that the customer's experience is the most important factor for us. So we are focusing on, first of all, it was said, understanding of our client needs, because this is the way it should be, and this is the way how we are designing our office buildings. This is the way how we are designing our apartments for our residential part of the business, or for our construction guys. The same. How the product, the end product, will be fitting in the society needs, in the users' needs, and how it will talk to all users of this product itself. So this is universal. The thing is to find the right answer for the question: what is the most important factor?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, if I
Sure,
can just briefly build on that. I think it is, and that's what I talked about a bit before, the liquid expectations. It's merging consumers, customers, but one of the clear impacts for that organization is, I call this, functional excellence is dead. So companies used to drive for functional excellence. We're driving these functional excellence. What we now have to think about is the consumer, the customer, the user experience that often goes across customers. That needs to, in order to deliver success and manage those seams of that seamless experience, you need to break down the silos in between the functions and get the functions not focused on just optimizing for themselves, but optimizing for the user, the customer, the consumer. And that's a big change, a big cultural, big operating model change for organizations. And that's what we're seeing.
Paul, I don't want to leave you out.
No, that's well, I mean, that's what we see. We can call that user experience. I think, building up on what my panelist also said, what user experience also allows you to do is come up with new business models, because the functions are quite siloed and they take you to execution. When you start, and there's always room for efficiency and further gains, but to a very large extent, what we used to call the back office is pretty well taken care of. Focusing now on the user experience is really breaking down those silos and looking at an integrated approach, and what is a user experience versus what is front office and what is back office. It's all becoming blurred. I mean, when you order an Uber cab with your app, where's the front office, where's the back office, what's the user experience? And by the way, who's the user? Is that you taking the cab? Is that the driver? Who's really pitching and promoting your service?
Fair point. Okay, we have a very diverse panel, obviously, and a lot of experience. The environment is changing constantly, so I just want to wrap up with one question that I'll pose to all of you, and kind of get your personal insights, if you will, in this changing environment. In the backdrop of all these revolutionary changes that we're currently experiencing. How do you sustain a competitive advantage in this kind of an environment from your personal perspective as it pertains to your companies? So, Hannes, start with you.
Listen to your customers and figure out how you can create value to them.
Okay. Till?
I think invest in failure, right? So put money into things without an expectation, without a direct return, but actually getting people to tell you what doesn't work. And if something comes out of it, great, but invest in people, put a portfolio approach in investing into the new, and don't accept, sort of don't just focus or incentivize that team around success, but actually incentivize them to come regularly back with what doesn't work. And of course, if something works, you'll take it forward. But actually continuously try to fail, just try stuff to some degree, yeah.
Okay, Lucia?
In a people business, keep intellectual capital at the right level to anticipate and help your client at the best.
Okay.
I think in my case, it's very much a question of having an outside-in view. Most of the disruption that we see in any industries actually come from people that were not in the industry. So curiosity, open-mindedness is really the key in terms of staying a thought leader. If you talk about the startups that we repeatedly mention, those guys didn't have any legacy systems. They didn't have any ERPs. They, by the way, didn't even have clients. But they really went about solving a problem that sometimes even clients didn't realize they had. And they went, without any boundaries or constraints.
I think that in such a dynamically changing environment, very important is also stick to your values. What you are doing and where you're doing the best, but also being innovative and try to be brave, take a chance, and don't be afraid to fail. But then do this again.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This was a really insightful conversation. Obviously, very, very diverse perspectives. Obviously, things are changing rapidly. All of these are leaders in their respective areas of business. Hopefully you found this discussion helpful, and if you have further questions from the panelists, I think most of us are around this evening over cocktails, so I look forward to seeing you guys then. Thank you.